The season has begun. The draft was yesterday. I know I said this video could come out at any point between now and the beginning of the season, but I felt like might as well go over it while it's fresh in my mind. And I'm just excited, so I decided to just go do this today. So, let's jump right in. Post-draft analysis. First off, just setting the stage for some of these slides that you're going to see during the season. This is where the heads will be piled up and everyone's total points on the year will be stack ranked. Everyone's at 0. This is just the draft order. In the fab, we'll have a fab slide going over the economy, how much fab everyone has left. Everyone has 100 obviously right now. And reminder about the weekly accolades: the star for the highest scoring team, the trash can for the lowest scoring team, and you can get a flame for the top 25% and an ice cube for the bottom 25%. But now let's get into everyone's team, and I'll give my opinions. And what I'm also going to do, hopefully you guys enjoy this, is I'm going to make a tier rankings of the draft. Not on long-term, well, I guess the draft does kind of relate to long-term success a little bit, but just solely on how you drafted and like where you got value, if you got some value picks, if you got some risky guys, whatever. My opinion, tier ranking. Get this go. Where is that? Right here, the tier ranking. Got all your faces here, S through F. I have not predetermined this, so I'm just gonna kind of. I have my opinions somewhat thought out about each of your teams and your drafts, but I have not predetermined what tiers I'm putting you in, so I'm gonna be doing it on the fly. So back to Joey's team. Joey has the first overall pick, so he gets McCaffrey. That's great. He actually is the highest projected scoring team week 1 with 101, the only team projected over 100 points week 1. And that's really just because of McCaffrey. But he also drafted decent starting pieces for his other slots. Keenan Allen, Rashee Rice, Mark Andrews. Having Caleb Williams and Aaron Rodgers is probably a good call in case Caleb Williams fails. I was someone who waited on quarterback along with some other people, and Aaron Rodgers is someone I could have taken. I think he could be a top 10 quarterback this year. Who knows? And one thing to point out about his team is apparently he likes the former Chargers. He's got Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and Mike Williams, all Chargers players last year that are now on different teams. So we'll see. Some of them have to work out, right? So but ultimately he's got a solid core, and getting McCaffrey first overall should work out unless he gets hurt. So where I'm going to put Joey, he gets the Niners defense as well, supposedly going to be a good defense. They got the Jets week 1. And these rankings that you'll see here, these are from Fantasy Pros, and these are not for week 1. This is like entire season rankings. I may do another video if I'm feeling ambitious before week 1, closer to week 1, that goes over specific week 1 rankings. But we're focused on the draft right now. So where I put Joey's, I'm thinking, where is Joey here? It's above average. I don't know if it's. He's not giving me an A. I don't love Mixon. I will say that, even as a Bengals fan. He seems to be a little banged up too. I'm gonna give Joey a solid B for this draft. No glaring flaws, but solid. And now, number 2 was Phillip, and ultimately I'm just tier ranking here the auto draft. He got absolutely boned by auto draft, deciding that it was not important to fill his starting slots in rounds 6, 7, and 8, because after rounds 1 through 5, these all can at least start for him. Bench. Now he gets his starting running backs and tight end, and I will say it could have been a lot worse at tight end. He got Musgrave, who, if Tucker Kraft doesn't steal targets or steal snaps at tight end on the Packers, I think Luke Musgrave could be solid. He was good before injury last year. But Tyler Algier as his RB1 is just, that's tough. And then Ray Davis, you just have to hope he vultures a touchdown from James Cook. And Clyde, I don't think Clyde's doing anything. And last year the Commanders' defense was awful, so we'll see if that continues or not. But Lamar and Herbert, he does have 2 quarterbacks. In theory, the best thing he can do is probably try to trade Herbert for value. But I don't know if anyone's really going to go out of their way to trade for Herbert at this point unless he really proves people wrong to start the season, because he did fall pretty far in the draft. But ultimately, I think Phil's team could be good if these rookies here step up. Odunze, Xavier Worthy, and if Jordan Addison, he's not a rookie, but he's young, if he can come back from injury and be fine, then this team could actually be fine, because Tyreek Hill's good and Nico Collins is supposed to be good. Might be the wide receiver 1 on the Texans, in my opinion. So, ultimately, though, when I've looked at other teams and their drafts, I have to put someone in the F tier, and I do think the auto draft did a terrible job. He needed starting running backs at those other spots, and it just didn't do that for him. So, Phil, not your fault. Just the auto draft did not do you any favors here. But he's projected 89, which is the lowest in the league, but not by a large margin. But that's to be expected. So the lowest projected score is 89, and the highest projected score is 101. The 12-point. Everyone's within that 12-point range, so it's obviously razor thin margins. Okay, Potter's team at number 3. He went heavy at wide receiver, and I think he is very dominant in that position. I am a fan of each of the receivers that he took. I don't have many reservations about any of them. Jaden Reed, I think the only reservation there is that he was the highest ADP Packers receiver, and I think almost any of those are Packers receivers. Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks could be the guy. So you are taking the risk that Jaden Reed is not the Packers' best wide receiver, but I think he's a good floor play. He got so many receptions last year and floor plays are really important in this league. So good floor plays. Potter, like me, waited on quarterback and tight end. That wasn't necessarily by design, at least for me, or by intention. If a good one was available at one of my picks, I would have taken him. I never felt the need to do that. So he also waited on quarterback and tight end. And Ben, I think I looked up the pronunciation. Sinnott? I thought I would have guessed it was Sino or Sinot, but I think it's Sinnett. Sinnott. I don't know. Someone can correct me. This is the A-Chan of last year. Should be good, I guess. I mean, there's Zach Ertz there too, so who knows if he's actually the starter or who's getting more snaps. But Trevor Lawrence is a great guy to get late. I think he's a guy like Herbert that also fell really far in drafts, but he, unlike Herbert, is not injured. And then at running back, he's a little weak, but I'd say he's serviceable there. Pollard is like an RB1A/B situation with Tyjae Spears. Zeke, I don't know if he or Dowdle is getting the true starting job, and Chubb is injured, but I think he is going to play week 1 in some capacity. If not, then like week 2. It's not going to be that far. Don't love the Giants defense, but ultimately I think he stocked up heavy on receivers. I like Jameson Williams as well. So ultimately, where am I putting Potter here on this tier ranking? I think I'm going to put him right here at a B. I think it could have been higher if he could have gotten a safer, better tight end. And defense, but I do like his receivers, and running backs are okay. So ultimately a B should be fine. I think if anyone in the B tier and above shouldn't, this is obviously, it's very hard to predict week 1, but I think anyone B tier or above shouldn't be getting eliminated week 1. All right, Johnny's team. There's some opinions to be had about this team with all the rookies. I think Amon-Ra was the safest, like, top-tier wide receiver to take in the draft, so Johnny reached for him. I was hoping I could get him at 7. I think it's a great pick. James Cook is risky. Didn't show that he could get the touchdowns last year. Malik Neighbors is a rookie and has Daniel Jones throwing to him. Brock Bowers is a rookie. I know he's, like, one of the best prospects in a long time at tight end, but it's Gardner. I mean, I like Gardner Minshew. And that I kind of like that whole Raiders team actually with keeping the interim head coach, but they have Michael Mayer too, and I don't think he's just going to be non-existent at tight end. So I think there will be a little bit of a snap share there to start off, and you kind of need people to be. I mean, that's his only tight end on his team, so he's banking on it. And then Jaden Daniels, I do like Jaden Daniels, but he is a rookie. Chuba Hubbard is a great pick because he's starting week 1, unlike Jonathan Brooks. So he got his RB2 pretty late, and he only needs him for like 2 weeks, and then he can get someone new. I don't think Kendre Miller or A.J. Dillon are going to be doing too much. Maybe Kendre Miller could. Shaheed's a good pick. Polk is a good pick. So he got some like good picks later. And I wanted the Bengals defense because we played the Patriots week 1, and he took them right before me. So, not right before, a couple picks before me as his second defense. So he kind of screwed me there. But if he can rely on if these rookies can step up and be good, then he could have a great team. So my thinking here with Johnny's team is he's either a team that's going to be eliminated in the first 5 weeks, or he's making it to the top 5 if these rookies pan out. So his ranking, I was in my head. My first thought was C, because I don't love the riskiness of the rookies, but I do like some of those guys he got later in the draft. Rashid Shaheed, Polk, who I know is a rookie, but he's not. He didn't take him with his high draft capital. I feel like the B tier is going to end up being just like clogged up, but it's really hard to differentiate teams this early in the season. So I could eventually start moving teams around later. That's not like set in stone here, but I'm going to give Johnny a B for some of these guys he got later. Yeah, that's it's teetering on the C though. I could see myself pulling him down if there's too many B's later in this draft or as I go through these. Now Cooper at 5, Bijan in the first should be solid. Then he goes Mahomes, and I just don't think you need to go quarterback early, and that's my opinion. So that's where I will stand on that. DJ Moore is a risk, but he has some upside. And I think Najee is really questionable. If we saw last year, Jaylen Warren is starting to really take hold in that offense. And he gets a lot of carries. They basically split carries. So I would way rather draft Jaylen Warren a couple rounds later than take Najee Harris. So I don't love that play. But I do like Evan Ingram, PPR machine. And after that, though, receiver, it's interesting here at receiver. Hollywood Brown is injured. So he is not playing week 1. Almost guaranteed 1 or 2 he's not playing. So that's a risk to take in the 6th round. And Sutton is a great value pick in the 7th. So DJ Moore and Sutton being his 2 starting receivers in reality. And I know this chart shows Hollywood Brown. He will not be here. So in theory, this spot would have to be filled by Sutton. And then the flexes are going to be I don't know. I mean, Ty Chandler and Troy Franklin or Yosevach, which, by the way, great 13th round pick. I would have taken him potentially if I could have. But I think I don't love Mahomes early. I think he's risky taking Hollywood Brown, who's injured. So, and he went early on the Jets. They play the Niners week 1. The Jets are a good defense, but Niners week 1 isn't great. So ultimately, I am going to put Cooper at C. It's not awful. It's like a close to a B. It's just right around the middle of the pack team, but I think there's some risk involved in his team. So I'm gonna hold to that opinion. Put some good picks in there. Cortland Sutton. I do like the Cortland Sutton pick. Especially with Bo Nix, I think with Bo Nix throwing to him, I mean, Sutton's the wide receiver 1 there, and Bo Nix looks good. So we'll see. I think that could be a home run pick, honestly. I would have loved to have had him. Got him that late. Now, Jack, your defending champion. He goes Breece in the first round. I would have taken Breece if he didn't. Ultimately, the 3 guys I wanted were Amon-Ra, Breece, or Bijan, and none of them fell to me. And it was very reasonable that one of them should have. But I think Breece is going to be a great running back this year. Could be the RB1. I think he will be, actually, because it's unlikely McCaffrey does it year over year. It's unlikely for anyone to do it year over year. But Breece, I think, might be your RB1 this year. Laporta, I love Laporta, but I just don't love drafting him in the 2nd. I think you're drafting him at his absolute peak, and we don't know if he could repeat what he did last year. Diggs, honestly, I'm just going to say I hate the pick. I was avoiding him as much as I could in this draft. Did not want to draft him at all. Too much of a risk because it assumes that he's going to be like the alpha in the offense, and he's not. I just don't think he is. I think he's actually going to be toxic to the team. Unrelated to fantasy, I think he might actually make the Texans worse, even though, in theory, he made the wide receiver room more talented. Anthony Richardson should be okay. There were some concerns that I heard this past week about him not looking great. in the joint practices, but he looked okay in the preseason game, and he was really hot for the first 3 weeks that he played last year. So high upside, risky pick. He went heavy on tight end in this entire draft. Laporta, and then he got Pitts in the 5th, and then he got Hawkinson to stash away in the 11th, right before I was about to stash him away. Before I actually had even drafted a tight end, I was going to draft Hawkinson just because why not? Goes 2 defenses in the first 10 rounds. That's a little questionable if you ask me. So, I don't know. Part of me likes the tight end strategy of taking tight ends away from other people, but I think he's putting himself at risk of not being in a great position. Jerome Ford is a serviceable RB2 for now, while he should get carries with Chubb being not at full capacity yet. Dobbs is our wide receiver too. Like, this is probably the worst. I'd have to check other teams, but I might say this is the worst wide receiver room of any team in the league. Diggs, Dobbs, Boyd. Like, that's weak. So, if we see Pitts like have a bust week 1, which, I think he'll bounce back to being a good tight end, a top tier tight end with Kirk Cousins throwing to him, and a new offensive coordinator. But Pitts could still be a bust. A lot of factors here. People might not like this, but I am going to put Jack in the D. Even though it's hard to argue with the defending champ, and he did well last year, but I just don't. I think he's in a terrible situation at wide receiver, and going 2 defenses early, drafting 3 tight ends. Although, like, if he survives late, and if all these tight ends work out, and Hawkinson comes back and is dominant, this could be a very, very good team. I think he needs to immediately address the wide receiver position, and he needs to hope Diggs works out, Anthony Richardson works out. He needs to hope a lot of people work out, but I'm gonna put him at the D tier. But the projected points does like him, puts him at a 96.6. That's actually not. I think that's above average in the league for projected. So now me, my team. I only drafted running backs and wide receivers for the first 9 rounds, and then I got my quarterback at Stafford, and I think I'm happy with that. I'm happy with not having to waste an earlier pick on a quarterback, and I can still land a guy like Stafford. I still had Rodgers available at that time, and I went with Stafford. That was a tough choice. I think Stafford is slightly safer, and that's what that was my goal, was the safer one. I had to take Justin Jefferson in the first. Not had to, but like that's not who I envisioned myself taking, because he does pose the risk of having an unreliable quarterback. I did so many mocks, as some of you also did, and you may agree with me in the feeling that this went nothing like any of my mocks. The only thing that went like my mocks is that I got Pittman in the 3rd, which was like the consistent thing that kept happening in my mocks, and I was very happy about it. I think Pittman is going to be a great wide receiver 1 on the Colts, and if Anthony Richardson can be good, Pittman should get the majority of the targets, and last year he was a great floor play, got at least it felt like 6-7 receptions a game, which is a great floor to have. And Stevenson, I'm hoping he'll bounce back, and Godwin I think is a great floor play guy too. Like, I don't see Godwin having many bust weeks. And then you take some risks. You go Brian Thomas, who could be really good on the Jags offense, Adonai Mitchell, who I kind of didn't think about it when I drafted him, but drafted 2 Colts receivers. Adonai Mitchell could be the wide receiver 2. He will, at least while Josh Downs is out, and he scored a touchdown in the preseason game, so hey. And then I took another risk with Jonathan Brooks. So I'll stash him away, but what is it, 2 weeks, 3? I think it was 3 or 4 weeks I heard, is that he's supposed to come back either week 3 or 4, which I can hope for sooner. But ultimately, so I stacked up on wide receivers and running backs, which is great, but it kind of paid for it at tight end. I got Gesicki, who is kind of my, honestly, close to last resort if this happened. I did some mocks where just no tight ends fell to me where I wanted them to, and then I had to just wait, and I get Gesicki. So I don't hate him. I of course, am biased. I think he'll be way better than projected this year. I think my hope is, and he should be like a top 20 tight end, which would be well above what he's projected to be. I won't say something crazy like top 10, although I do think the ceiling is there. Um, but yeah, Gesicki, Falcons D is just like a week 1 play. They play the Steelers. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. But that is my team, and now I have to decide where to put myself on this. And if I'm being honest, my bias would put me at a B, but if I'm unbiased, I'm probably realistically that was a C draft. I wasn't super excited about it. I didn't feel great about it after, because you guys are a lot smarter than the mock drafts and draft people. You reach for people that you know are good value, like all those running backs that are going to start in place of injured guys week 1, like Chuba Hubbard, Jerome Ford. I really wanted to land one of those kind of guys, and I didn't. So that hurts, and I ended up having to take the risk on a bunch of some rookies and Jonathan Brooks. So yeah, it could be rough. It's a C for me. Honestly, some of you might call this draft a D, considering how bad I am at tight end, and I think quarterback's fine. No one's hating on Stafford. I am on the lower end of the projected points week 1 as of right now, but yeah. Okay, Ben's team. How long have I been recording, by the way? 20 minutes. Okay, this might be a long video, but maybe you guys don't care. Ben goes 4 running backs in the first 5 rounds. Very heavy on the running back, and I think he will be very strong at that position. I think Barkley's solid, Kenneth Walker's solid, and then your risks are Rachaad White and Mostert. Some people might not think Rachaad White is a risk, and maybe he isn't, but I think there is a chance he heavily regresses. They didn't bring in too much competition for him. They brought in that some rookie that might get some usage in the offense, but ultimately the Bucs are still the Bucs, and they didn't make a lot of changes to their team. So Rachaad White should probably see similar production, and Mostert being the RB2 last year with like 20 plus touchdowns. I mean, we're not going to see that again, but because I think Achane is going to probably take over, but there is also a chance that Mostert remains kind of the RB1 in that offense. Maybe that's a hot take, but I think there's a lot of upside with Mostert here, but also a lot of risk. He's getting old as well. And then Trey Benson is a solid piece to stash on the bench if James Conner gets hurt or if he just takes over the job. Purdy's a solid quarterback, but that is about where my compliments of this draft end. I think he is awful at receiver. I would put him just above Jack Colston at receiver with Pickens, Gabe Davis, Roman Wilson. I think there's a chance those guys are serviceable. And then his tight ends are Cade Otton and Jatavian Sanders. Like a guy like Otton, like my whole theory on waiting to like the very last second to just take Gesicki is like I don't think Gesicki and Cade Otton are going to be that different this year. Maybe I'll be wrong, but that's why I'd rather wait 3 rounds and then I like Jatavian. I think he could have gone without Otton and just taken Jatavian Sanders and someone else in the 13th or 12th. Bryce Young, I guess, that's probably just a. There's not really a great reason to have 2 quarterbacks unless you're just taking a potential upside pick, and if Bryce Young can pan out to being a first overall pick in the NFL, then maybe that's a good pick. But ultimately, Ben. If you have an extreme glaring weakness on your team, I think I have to put you in C, and the glaring weakness is receiver. So join me in the C tier. That's where you're going. No one's in the A or S tier yet, and we'll see if I end up putting anyone there. I might have to rework the rankings after I go through all these because, like I said, I did not predetermine them. But yeah, let's keep going. We're about halfway through the teams now. Jake, A.J. Brown on the first stacks it with Jalen Hurts, so that's a high risk, high reward situation. Could be bad if the Eagles can't figure it out. It could be bad. And running backs, I think he got some serviceable guys for waiting at running back. DeAndre Swift and Javonte Williams. Ferguson, I think, is a great dark horse candidate to be like a top 5 tight end this year. So I actually do like Ferguson. And then later in the draft, he gets guys Curtis Samuel, Jerry Jeudy. I mean, I don't love Jerry Jeudy. Curtis Samuel, I think I actually heard is hurt, but could be a factor in that Bills offense with them basically losing every single receiver from last year. Jaleel McLaughlin, I do like that pick. And after that, later in the draft, I don't really love. I mean, Elijah Mitchell, I guess if CMC sees any injury, that's actually a great pick. But Chig, I don't think he's going to be good. Derek Carr, I don't see a point of even rostering him. So ultimately, I think this is a solid draft. I think all around I'm seeing decent floors, and that's, I think, the what you want. If you can get a bunch of good floor plays week one from the team you drafted, I think you're solid. I don't love Jalen Hurts. I think he'll see a huge regression. So I was close just now in my head to putting Jake in A, but I think for a couple reasons, I'm going to put him at B. One of those being Jalen Hurts. I think he'll regress. And then that's about it. I mean, maybe I'm being too nitpicky now. Curtis Samuel being hurt, so drafting someone in the 7th who's hurt that also is unproven, and then just some later picks that I don't really care for. That's about it. Bordering on the A tier, so we'll see. I could end up bumping that up if I don't have enough A and S tiers. Fleming, you know what I'm going to say here. What I've already said about drafting quarterbacks early. Goes Josh Allen in the first round. I think it might have been earlier than any mock had him going either, which could work out for him. And then I think Mike Evans is a solid guy to get in the second. And then Kincaid, I think, is a top 5 tight end candidate because there were so many vacated targets on the Bills. And he and Shakir are like the only 2 guys that were there last year that are returning. So I think we could see a lot of Dalton Kincaid. I do like the Terry McLaurin pick. I wanted him in the 4th. That was a thing that kept happening in my mocks, and I'm high on McLaurin this year. I think Jaden Daniels is a huge upgrade for him at quarterback. Jaylen Warren, while I don't like him as your first running back, I think he's a great pick this year. And then getting Tyjae Spears as your second. I think you got 2 really serviceable guys for waiting till the 5th and 6th to take running backs. Dalton Schultz is another guy that should be good. I think they also drafted some tight ends, so Schultz might see a decrease. And then it looks like you basically just took a bunch of shots on some other guys. Jalen Wright, kind of banking on injuries in the Miami backfield. Ravens defense should be solid. Justice Hill, I've heard good things, could be solid this year. I think Keaton Mitchell's hurt, so Justice Hill is the RB2 right now. Madison, RB2 on the Raiders, so I don't think he's a super talented guy. I was high on him last year, and I paid for that in multiple leagues. He was awful. And then Demarcus Robinson, who right now it actually has Demarcus Robinson as his starting lineup over Madison, Justice Hill. So I think he's got some solid floor plays. Josh Allen is a high upside player. He's got the Allen Kincaid stack also. So that is high risk, high reward. So this is a tough one to rank. I'm between B and C, right around the middle again. But I think I'm gonna go down. Oh man! But he had some good later. I want to pull him down because of the Josh Allen pick, and that's just my opinion. But I do think he made some good picks at running back. But still, overall weak. He's gonna be weaker than other teams at running back. He has the 17th best RB1 and the 11th best RB2 by the analytics. And two defense. Yeah, okay. I don't agree with the 2 defense play, so I am gonna go with the C. Just my opinion, okay? That's where I'm putting him. And now Ryan's team. I think he got 3 solid running backs in the first 5 rounds. Some people, there's mixed opinions about Zamir White. I think Zamir White is a candidate to be way better than people expect. I have him in another league, and I'm excited about him. Zach Moss is a little bit of a risk because I think Chase Brown could very likely be just as productive, and you can get him a lot later in the draft, so it's just, to me, not worth the risk. Kyron in the first is solid. He had to reach for him to get him, and I think if he can repeat what he did, Kyron is solid. Debo is solid, except injury-prone, and he's a guy I would probably avoid. First off, it seems like Brandon Ayuk is staying. If he were leaving, then in theory, actually, I don't know if that would be good or bad for Debo, because in theory, Ayuk being there pulls away coverage from him. So in a way, it helps him. But either way, Debo is injury prone, and that's a risk. I feel like there's never been a season where he's been fully healthy. And 3rd round for Stroud is okay, I think. Where you're missing out is the rushing upside, and I think you want a quarterback. If you're going to go early on a quarterback, get a quarterback with rushing upside, and he doesn't have that. And after that, I mean, he goes with Josh Palmer, who was a reach at the time, but in my opinion should be the wide receiver 1 on the Chargers. He's already familiar with Justin Herbert, unlike Ladd McConkey and some other guys that could also step up in that offense. And I do hate these tight ends. I think Freiermuth is kind of meh. I think if Justin Fields is the quarterback, here's what I think. I think Justin Fields is the better quarterback for the Steelers to choose as their starter. But I've just never really seen Justin Fields use tight ends that much. I mean, I guess Kmet had a decent year last year, so maybe that's wrong. But I think I heard reports that Freiermuth and Russell Wilson had good connections in camp. And if Russell Wilson was the starting quarterback, I think I'd be higher on Freiermuth, but I don't think Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback. So in that case, I'm down on Freiermuth. And then drafting Josh Downs, who's hurt, and then Diami Brown is an upside pick. I think a good pick there at that point. And then Jordan Mason, if we see McCaffrey missing any time, could fill in. Defenses are pretty weak, though, I would say. The Bears actually might be okay on defense this year. So this is another just like right around the middle of the pack team. There's some weak points, there's some strong points, but that's how it is in an 18-team league. You can't be strong everywhere. So, yeah, that's tough. I think the wide receivers are rough. They're rough only because I think Debo's injury prone, and then after that it's rough. So there's not a lot of safety there. Yeah. All right, Ryan. I'll be a little generous today. I'll give you a B, but you're close to a C. Okay, it's not close. It is close. But I know I might end up bumping some of those B's up to A because we've seen no A tiers yet. Maybe I'm being too picky. I am definitely being too picky. Not maybe. I'm definitely being too picky at this point. But here's JC's team, and this is an interesting one. I think he got a lot of guys. He got a lot of receivers. He's a lot of depth at receiver, so a lot of potential upside on his bench on guys like Dontavian Wicks and Brandon Cooks that could be really good. I think Brandon Cooks was heavily slept on, and I would have liked to have gotten him in this draft. But Jahmyr Gibbs in the first is a risk. It seems like they're optimistic about him, so I will be optimistic about him and that he will play week 1. Devontae Adams is a solid floor play receiver. I don't care about his age. He will get you points if he stays healthy. Kamara, I think, is also a good pick. I don't care if he's getting old. I should care a little bit, but I think Kamara is a solid floor play. Christian Kirk is the only returning receiver on the Jaguars, so he should, in theory, still have that connection with Trevor Lawrence and continue to be good. Burrow, I'm obviously biased, but I think this is the year for Burrow. I think he'll have a great season and will, I think, finally live up to the fantasy potential. I think he'll be above. I mean, he's lower on draft boards for understandable reasons. He keeps getting hurt, but I think this is the year for him. That's all I'll say. And then Keon Coleman. I like Keon Coleman too. Kmet, I already said, or no, I didn't already say this, but Everett is also on the team now, and I heard that they're kind of splitting the role at tight end, so I don't love Kmet, but should be okay. But I think Dameon Pierce is a great late pick. I wanted Dameon Pierce also, but with Mixon being a little questionable right now, and I heard good reports about Dameon Pierce in camp that he's looking a lot better than he did last year. He was pretty awful last year, I will say. And then some long shots on guys like Ricky Pearsall and Marvin Mims. I don't know who the Vikings play week 1, so I don't know if that's a good matchup or not. But I do like this team. I'm a fan of this draft for biased and unbiased reasons. Where I think you win these drafts is later, and I think Keon Coleman, great pick. Brandon Cooks, great pick. Dontavian Wicks, great pick. Dameon Pierce, great pick. So I think that's where he hammered home the good draft here. So I will put him at A. And I will also say he by far had the best drafted team last year. Getting guys like, who was it? Who's that? Blanking on his name, the Raiders guy. Oh, God. Dude, what's his name? He came from the Patriots. Dude, I hate this. I got this here. Don't worry, I'm going to get it. I will not leave until I figure out this person's name. Devontae Adams, team. Jacoby Myers. He drafted Jacoby Myers kind of late last year, and he ended up being like a flex play for like a majority of the season. He had a bunch of good later picks, and I think he hammered some of those this year as well. So he's an A. Honestly, teetering on an S. The only reason he's not an S is because I think there are some weak spots like at tight end, and that's it. But if I'm being honest, you know what? I'm being too mean. He's an S. It's an S tier. If that's his only weakness in an 18-team draft, you're an S tier. You're going to have some kind of weakness somewhere. And they're still upside with Kmet. So, bang. That's where I'm putting him. Congrats, S tier. Good draft, JC. Mitchell. Goes Garrett Wilson in the first and then Travis Kelce, which is, I think there's a risk there with Kelce regressing. I think we started to see some regression last year. Montgomery should be a great pick, especially if Jahmyr Gibbs misses any time, but even if not, Montgomery is still solid. It is weird to think that he's drafting, in theory, a running back 2 on the team as his first running back, but I think he's a great floor play. Montgomery will get carries on that offense, no questions asked. And then Amari Cooper and Christian Watson are good picks. I think Christian Watson is one of those Packers receivers that's better to take than Jaden Reed because you can get him a little later. And then while I think Gus Edwards is kind of a untalented player, I think he can be serviceable if he gets you a touchdown, which he probably will. Then that's all you need early on is a guy who can get touchdowns. I think Khalil Herbert as a third running back can be serviceable. I think you might see him get used in the offense more than we think, even with DeAndre Swift there. And then Goff, I think, is a great quarterback. He's a guy that I would have considered taking around that 7th, 8th round if he was there for me, because I think he's a really solid floor play, and that's what you want. You want a solid floor play. So ultimately, and then likely is a great guy to hold on to if Mark Andrews gets hurt like he does every year. Then likely is fantastic. And then Xavier Leggett, I think is the pronunciation. There's upside there, but I think Deontay Johnson is the alpha in that receiver room for Carolina. And you're also banking on Bryce Young being a competent quarterback. But there's some good pieces here. There are good pieces here, and I'm trying to think about where I want to put this. I think it is above average, I would say, because there's some good floor plays and also some good high upside later picks. So I do really like Garrett Wilson this year too, so this is maybe biasing me a little bit. I am going to put Mitchell in the A, and I think while I'm at it, I'm going to put Jake in the A. Let me go back and look at his team, but I know he was a guy that I was close to putting him in the A in the first place. I'm just not high on Jalen Hurts in the second, but no, I'm being too mean. This is an A. I do like this team. I knew this was probably going to happen where I was going to reorder them after the fact, but yeah, I guess he was the first one I would have put in A, and then Mitchell. So yeah, I do like Mitchell's team. I think Mitchell put together a good squad here off the draft. Buxty I thought was they have the Commanders week 1, so it's any rookie's first game, no matter how good they are, is usually pretty rough. So it's a good defense to have week 1. Okay, David's team. David's draft. I think was he one of the only ones to go running back? Let me look for green. Oh, okay, Ben did it too. Ben went heavier than David, but David is one of the went heavier than others at running back to start. Jonathan Taylor, I'm a fan of. Pacheco, I am a fan of. Those are foundational pieces that he probably starts those guys for a majority of the season, which it's good to have guys that you can feel confident in. I mean, it's all opinion, but I am confident in those guys. Where I'm not super confident is Njoku, and I'm being picky. I think he could be good, but it's reliant on Deshaun Watson being solid, and then his receivers are okay. The problem is he has 0 wide receiver 1s on his team, unless you count Demario Douglas as a wide receiver 1, as he claims, which maybe he's right, but still, we don't know if it's Drake May or Brissett throwing the ball, but either way, it's an okay, I guess, quarterback situation, below average. But Jalen Waddle's solid, I guess. I'm not personally a huge fan of him, but I understand why people like him. And Tank Dell also shows a lot of upside. Like I said, in these Texans and Packers receiver rooms, I'd rather take the guys that fall later in the drafts because I think they're just the higher upside pick to take because they could be just as productive, but you can get them later. So Tank Dell was the best Texans wide receiver to take, but you are taking on the downside of this is you could be taking the Texans wide receiver 3 in the 4th round. And if he gets targeted like a wide receiver 3, then that's could be a tough look. And then Tua is okay. I think the fact if we compare Tua to like a quarterback you can get in the 8th, 9th, 10th round, like Kirk Cousins, Stafford, Rodgers, Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, I'm taking those guys a million times out of a million over Tua because Tua has zero rushing upside. He led the league in passing yards and was like top 3 in touchdowns and was still the QB 12. So you are getting the if Tua plays his absolute best football, he is the QB 12, QB 10 maybe we can say, just because he does not run the ball, he does not rush. So that's where I'm down on Tua, but I think he still has a solid floor because they have a very highly efficient passing offense. So there you go. Rico Dowdle's a great pick. Jacoby Myers is a great pick. Demario Douglas. And so this is where Davis started hammering some good picks, I think, later. I think the Steelers, my take on the Steelers is watch them be like, I would not be surprised if the Steelers were the highest scoring defense week 1. I think they're playing the Falcons, and the Falcons, while I'm high on them, they might have some growing pains having all these new players in with Kirk Cousins, and really the only returning receiver is what's his face, Drake London. So there's a lot of new pieces on that offense and new offensive coordinator. So it's going to be a whole new thing, and I think the Steelers are just going to like trash on them week 1. No joke, because I think the Steelers usually come out hot to start seasons, whether or not they're good. So I think the Steelers defense was a great pick here, and Luke McCaffrey could be the wide receiver 2 on that Commanders team. And Dulcich has a lot of upside, and then Wan'Dale Robinson is just a shot in the dark, I guess. I don't really have an opinion on him. So I like this draft a lot. What I don't like is Tua, and what I kind of don't like is Njoku, but you got an upside guy later, and you got a bunch of great picks later. So I will go out and say, oh God, I'm okay. I almost said S, but I think it has to be an A, just because. No. Being too mean. This is a good team. There's good pieces all around. There's like almost no one I hate except for Tua. And hate is a strong word. I'm just not a fan. So that is my take. That was a good draft. And now James. Now this is one I have an opinion on. I think he has a lot of high risk, high reward players, and by a lot I mean I think every single one of his first 7 picks is a high risk, high reward player. Derrick Henry. The risk is he's old and can't continue to be good at football. But the upside is he is now replacing Gus Edwards. He's way more talented than Gus Edwards, and Gus Edwards just had an amazing season on the Ravens because of all the RPOs they run, and he'll get the goal line carries. Some people might think Lamar will vulture them away from him, but I think Derrick Henry will see a lot of touchdowns, like a 15-plus touchdown season potentially from Henry. Olave, not someone I'm personally fond of, but I know he has a lot of upside if he can be their wide receiver 1 and Derek Carr can be competent. Trey McBride, another huge high upside pick. Not as much risk here as others. I think Trey McBride is going to be good this year, but there are a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. I think with Marvin Harrison coming in, and I think Michael Wilson is kind of slept on. Greg Dortch is also slept on. And I think they have Zay Jones, too. So they got a lot of receivers there. But Trey McBride should see solid usage. So I do like this pick. T. Higgins, even though I'm a fan of the Bengals, obviously, and I'm a fan of him as a player, the risk is that we saw what can happen last year. He was kind of boom bust every week last year. But that part of that was quarterback play with Burrow being hurt early in the season. And then Burrow was out, and he was playing with a backup. So a lot of things, but T. Higgins, I think, is also extremely high upside. We've seen him be way better. Like, getting him in the 4th could be an insane steal when it's all said and done. So it just depends on how it plays out. Jordan Love, high risk, high reward as well. I think he can be one of the top 10, even top 5 quarterbacks this year if he lives up to it, but he could also not be that good. And then Jackson Smith-Njigba, great pick. I think I would have liked to target him around here in the draft as well. But the risk is still that he is the wide receiver 3, and he's kind of buried behind those other guys, and he's relying on Geno Smith as well. And then J.K. Dobbins, another extreme. This is definitely more on the risky side because, especially being his RB2, J.K. Dobbins is quite risky, given that he might not be the starter on that offense. But I would imagine he should see some usage. He's a talented player. He needs to to stay healthy, and he's injured like every ligament in his knee, I feel like. And Tyler Lockett, he gets the other Seahawks receiver, so in theory one of those guys should be good to start every week. And then Jahan Dotson, I don't know how much he'll be used on the Eagles offense. I don't think much personally. I think Marshawn Lloyd is a good guy to have. I heard the Packers are going to try to use him, so he is like their RB2. And then Audric Estima is just a guy to take a shot on. I don't like the Eagles defense. I don't really care for Noah Fant, although he could be useful in that offense. He's got a lot of Seahawks. So high risk, high reward isn't really the best way to go, I think, in Guillotine League. So for that reason, I am going to put him in a C. It's a close to a B, but I'm going to put him in the C tier for that reason alone. Okay, moving on. Basali's team, he lands Jamar Chase at the 16th, which is insane. I do not understand it. He was the ADP 5 or 6 or whatever, one of those two. I passed on him, and then I was having microphone issues, so no one could hear me after I made my pick, where I picked Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase, which was a close call, but it's more of just me spreading it around. I don't have Justin Jefferson in any other league, and I think he is being slept on just because of the quarterback play, and I think he's kind of immune to bad quarterback play. And Sam Darnold could be okay, actually. That's the only reason. I have Jamar Chase in other leagues, so I'd rather just have someone else, Justin Jefferson, who is also a great receiver. But I do think, because I think Burrow is coming up here on an MVP season, and I think Jamar Chase is a sneaky wide receiver 1 candidate this year, like the wide receiver 1, the best wide receiver this year. Of course, that's a little biased, but if my other thing is true about Joe Burrow having a career MVP season, then Jamar should also have a great season. ETN, solid pick. I think there's a little bit of risk there that he can't get it done, but they don't have any competition for him. So he's getting carries, he's getting touches, and that's what matters. He's got the floor. Devonta Smith is solid. George Kittle is a risky tight end because we see times in games where he just only blocks and gets no catches and puts up a goose egg or 1 point. So that's tough. I think Brian Robinson is a good pick because I think he is the RB1 on the Commanders, and that's coming from little information, except I heard Eckler's like returning kickoff. So if they're using Eckler for that, Brian Robinson is the RB1. I think Eckler's just like a change of pace receiving back, who's also a lot older. Singletary should be the RB1 on the Giants, so whether or not the Giants are good doesn't really matter, I guess, because he should get the carries. So he's a guy I liked in drafts, and I just didn't get him. Thielen should see solid usage, except it is the Panthers. Mooney, kind of a sleeper wide receiver 2 on the Falcons, so I do like Mooney, has some upside, but maybe I wouldn't have drafted him in the 8th round. Michael Wilson is another guy I like a lot, has a lot of upside. And then for waiting a long time to get a quarterback and then getting Baker, I think that's solid. Baker is very serviceable for now. And then getting Keaton Mitchell late and putting him on his IR is a solid play, and then Malachi Corley is just a rookie with upside. So ultimately, I think this is a good draft. I don't see glaring weaknesses. Your risk is Kittle, but he's still solid. And yeah, so if I had to rank this, honestly, I think I am putting him at the A. I think it's a solid draft. I like this team. Yeah, I think that's about it to say about this team. Good floor plays. Good floor. That team has a really high floor, and I think that's what's important early in the season, because the draft is almost irrelevant in like 3 weeks because rosters change so much. But just solely off the draft, that was a solid team. Now, Matt, second to last team. We are 49 minutes into this. Wow, I slowed down. Marvin Harrison and Puka Nacua, probably the riskiest first 2 picks combined, in my opinion. You know, any rookie, you run the risk of them not panning out to their full potential, and Puka Nacua is a little banged up. And you'd also be kind of banking that he is just as good as he was last year, which I don't think he will be. I mean, he'll be good, but not as good. Aaron Jones, I do like Aaron Jones. I think he'll get a lot of carries and touches in that offense, check downs, whatnot. And then going DK is solid, and Ladd McConkey, you're another kind of risky but upside pick. Could be the Chargers RB or wide receiver 1. Getting the QB1 from last year in the 6th round is solid. I think it's better than, Tua. I think, did David draft Tua in the 6th round? He did, but 3 picks later. So, I think Dak is immensely a better pick than Tua. He doesn't run it a ton, but he runs it more than Tua, and he also has the passing upside. Blake Corum is a great pick. Might actually play week 1 or get carries even if Kyron Williams is in. So, and then Kamani Vidal or whatever. I do like him as an upside running back who might see touches in that Chargers backfield. And then Taysom Hill is kind of an interesting pick. I think one way or another he will get used almost every week. So I think he has a solid floor for waiting this long to get a tight end that is used in multiple ways on the offense. I think he'll be a good tight end to start. And then he secured it up with Zach Ertz, who might be the starter over Ben Sinnott. But who knows? I think we'll have to see. And Kirk Cousins, he got another quarterback. So, I mean, I don't think you need 2 quarterbacks, but Kirk Cousins is solid. If he didn't draft Cousins, I actually might have drafted Cousins in, I think it was the 12th or 13th when I ended up taking a quarterback. Or, sorry, 10th or 11th where I ended up taking a quarterback. But I think this team is risky, but somewhat solid. So, given those factors, I am going to put him in the C tier. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. So that's that. And last but not least, Huff. He goes Drake London and then Achane at the turn of the first and second. I mean, it's not awful, but I'm not super high on Drake London. And Achane, also a guy, it's just hard. Mostert isn't just going to go away. So, I don't know. I think that's ultimately the Dolphins are a passing offense, so it's going to go through the pass game first. But Achane could be solid. I could eat my words. And then James Conner, I think, is a good pick to secure up your second running back. Kyler Murray, I think, has a ton of upside this year, so I do like that pick as well. Deontay Johnson, also a pick that I like. I think I've heard good things from camp that he is like the clear alpha in the offense, and he has been one of the most like efficient wide receivers at route running and getting open, but his downside has been quarterback play. So, not that he went to a place with a great quarterback, but we can hope. We can hope that Bryce Young can be slightly more accurate than other quarterbacks he's had in the past. Goddard, I think he's a solid like mid-range tight end that you can get. And then after that, I do like the Shakir pick. I don't really have an opinion about Charbonnet, just a backup running back. Shakir could be a really solid pick. Quentin Johnson, even with all the, he dropping the ball, had a terrible rookie season, did not live up to the hype. I still think there's a chance he could rebound from that. And then goes another quarterback at Deshaun Watson. That's not a bad quarterback to get late in the draft. Dortch has upside in this, the Dortch Kyler Murray stack. Don't know if I'll actually start him. And then Mr. Irrelevant, Jonnu Smith. Man, this is tough. This is between a B and a C. I think it's another just like middle of the pack team. I'm tempted to put him in B just because I've given more C's, but that I would have to look back. I'm going to go with my gut, and I think it's a C. I don't think it has to be an even distribution here. That is my tier list. We got JC and David in the front. Jake, Mitchell, Mark in the A tier. Joey, Jack, Potter, by the way. There are 2 Jacks, so for those of you any of you that get confused, Jack Potter, I will call him Potter. And Jack Colston, we're calling him Jack. So Potter, Jack. So Potter, Joey, Potter, Johnny, Ryan in the B tier. And then Cooper, me, Ben, Fleming, James, Matt, Huff in the C tier, Jack in the D tier, and Philip in the F tier. Not really his fault. I'm not really sure if there would have been any F tier teams if everyone actually got to draft themselves, but that's just how the cookie crumbled. So we're almost at an hour here. I've talked for an hour. But I'm excited for this year. I'll probably I don't want to overpromise. Maybe do another video before the start of the season, but we do have our baby on the way and will be born like the week before the season starts or the week of like the season starting, like right around early September. So we'll have to see. I don't know how much effort I'll be able to put into these videos every week, at least early on, but I'm going to try my best. But Fun draft, everyone. Good luck. Don't get eliminated week 1.